is found. I'm living the questions, finding the answers in your grace. I'm living the questions, discovering all that you have made.
Welcome to Living the Questions, a podcast where we create a space to discuss how faith intersects with culturally relevant topics. Today our topic is media and faith.
I'm Molly.
And I'm Tranquil.
In the studio today, we'll be talking with Katie Friesen Smith, who serves as the director of Living the Questions, with an interest in spiritual formation and leadership. Our first question, Katie, what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, I like all things ice cream, but vanilla with Heath crunched up on the inside. Or banana. Those would be my two favorites.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, right? What about you guys? What's your favorite ice cream?
Oh, gosh. I should have seen this coming. I like anything chocolate. Not gonna lie.
Anything with fudge and peanut butter in it.
Ooh, that's a good answer.
Ooh, good answer.
Yep.
Let's leave. Go get ice cream.
I agree. Just, we're done.
Done.
Yep.
The end. All right, Katie, so we're wondering if we could ask you some questions about the topic.
Yes.
So, what is your experience with journalism or writing? Do you have any experience with that?
I don't have a lot of experience with journalism and writing, although I was on the school newspaper in high school. So really my experience is, right, like reading it and engaging in it.
What's your opinion of whether it's beneficial, or what do you think about it?
Yeah. You know, it's kind of interesting because we live in a time now that it seems like the newspaper, you know, articles that we have been written or we're writing seems to be going less and less because there's all this social media kinds of interactions. And so I think written articles, written news, written stories is really beneficial for not only passing along information and important bullet points, but also in order to get the community talking and engaged with community kinds of things.
So how does your faith impact bias in the media?
Oh, how does my faith impact bias in the media? Oh, that's a really good question. So my filter, my faith, becomes one of the filters through which I read or I engage with media, whether it's written or whether it's visual, recorded kinds of media. And so I'm always filtering through that. And so sometimes it then causes me to have a judgment towards something that I see, either positively or negatively. So if I see something in media that agrees with a faith worldview or a biblical worldview, then I'm supportive. And if I see something that isn't in alignment with that worldview, I tend to want to dismiss it, and I don't think that's always the best response, but that's just is an honest response of sometimes I might dismiss something if it's not in line with my view, and so I need to always be mindful of being open to learning more.
So you talked about Christian content in the media. Why do you think there is so little Christian content in the mainstream media?
Why is there so little Christian content in the mainstream media? I think a couple things. One is, you know, it costs money, right? So where are our sources of money? So whoever has larger pockets of money are going to be more likely to create or produce things that are in media format. And so Christian groups may not have that. I think that two, there maybe are less Christians in the media, although when I say that, I don't know if that's true or not, but I wonder if those individuals who are Christians, if they were in the media, might bring forth more Christian content.
So how do you find God in the media when it's not necessarily labeled as Christian?
Oh, good. Good question. How do I find God in media? So I think one of the ways that I find God in media is through creativity. I believe that God is a creative God. So when I see things that are creatively made, so even if it's just in the technology or the people behind the scenes that are producing something or acting something or writing something, that their creativity reflects part of who God is. And then I think the other way that I see God in media is through beauty. I think of God often being a God of beauty, a God who has created things. And so in the sense of seeing something that's beautiful, so I could watch, let's say, a television show or a movie, and when there is beauty that's created in the scene, I think that gives us a snapshot of who God is.
In some of that, we see, sometimes God can be misrepresented in the media. And do you see some of that happening in today's culture?
I certainly think messages about God or messages about people who follow God are misrepresented. And, media, we use it to tell a story, right? And we often want to tell a story that supports a view or a perspective that we have. And so in order to do that, we might misrepresent somebody because we haven't spent time with them to know who they really are. So we might just make broad generalizations. So I think something that media does, because information gets spread quickly across large groups of people in a quick amount of time, is it can spread stereotypes about individuals that then aren't exactly accurate, so it creates that misrepresentation.
How do you think the increased availability of information affects us?
Well, how does the increased availability of information, I think one of the ways I've noticed it affecting me is if I don't know something, I will Google it, right? In fact, in my family with my kids, one of the things is a question will come up and we'll often say, around the dinner table, well, if only there wasn't a way to Google that and find information out about it. So I think it affects us in the sense that we think we should be able to get information right away. So if something's going to take me longer to get information, I'm not likely to stick with the process. And then I think that there's a lot of information. I get overwhelmed with the amount of information that comes at me on any given day. And it's information about advertisement, it's information about news stories, it's information about just my siblings or family members wanting to get a hold of me and friends. So I feel like I'm bombarded, and so I feel exhausted with so much information. How do you feel about information and that availability and access to it?
I would definitely agree with what you're saying. There's so much information out there, and when you're just constantly taking it in, it becomes overwhelming and exhausting. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I have not been in an environment where that isn't the case. Yeah. I have grown up and the internet has always been a thing. Google has always pretty much been a thing that I can access for school or for just my own self.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that can influence that too is we always want more as human beings, and that combined with the vast availability of information can really cause us to have shorter attention spans, and we don't put as much effort into one thing or won't have as much patience for something, and we'll be ready to move to the next thing and not see stuff through. Yeah.
One of the practices that I do on Sunday is, because I feel like I'm always plugged in, I intentionally do not take my phone to church on Sunday. I unplug. And I'm often getting feedback from family members of, well, I couldn't get a hold of you. And it's it's just a couple hours. I will be available. And so one of the ways that I kind of deal with all this information coming at me and all this technology is to sort of unplug and do that as a regular practice.
Yeah, definitely has become more prevalent in the culture that we expect people to respond to us to sooner, and with the availability of information, the ease of communication, we always seem to want something right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Yep.
I do think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Even like if somebody doesn't reply to you immediately, you can start getting concerned because where are they? What are they doing? Why aren't they talking now?
Right. And like right away means how long? Like within 5 minutes or less or more?
A minute, maybe? I'm not sure.
It honestly depends. Depends on the person, the situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kind of that we're so used to having Google that if we have to ask somebody else for information and not having that immediately is nerve-wracking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and another thing I find with Google is I'll just Google something to get information. So medical information, news information, even about a person. If I want to know more about a person, you kind of Google their name and find out more or see what they look like. And it's like, how do I even know if that information is accurate or not? I just assume it is, right?
Yep.
But it might not be.
Mm-hmm. And with a lot of sites and things that may just pop up on Google, there can be many contributors, and it's really hard to find source information sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is a great conversation.
Oh, yeah. We're great at this. That's okay. That problem with source information is also what happens with Wikipedia. And
Yes.
that's why teachers are increasingly saying you cannot use Wikipedia. And if you're going to use information on Wikipedia, you have to go down to the bottom, figure out what source they use to find the information, and use that source, read it, figure out where they got it, make sure it's accurate.
Right. So technology and media, what it's doing these days is it's summarizing vast amount of information, and it becomes a secondary or a third resource. And so when your teachers tell you, go down to the bottom of Wikipedia and look for the primary sources, look for the actual person who has spoken on the topic.
In that sense, in the sense of, searching out for truth, is there a way that we can be positively invested in the media? I mean, there's always the chance that, people won't trust what they say or what we say. And so is there a way that we can be positively invested?
Yeah, I think that when we think about truth and we think about media, we need to be discerning individuals, or we need to be wise consumers. So the sense of, if I'm looking at a news article, or if I'm looking and watching something on the internet or on one of the popular channels, I need to have the sense of discernment on what am I seeing, how might that impact me, and what messages is this telling me? So sometimes what I need to be aware of is media is educating me. And so as a student with media, I need to make sure it's educating me in the ways that I want to be educated. So I want to be educated in ways of character, of honor, of respect for other individuals. I want to grow in ways of justice. And so when I see and experience media, whatever format it is, whether it's social media or print media, if it is teaching me the opposite of those things, I've got to be ready to say, as a follower of Jesus, okay, that's not right, and I want to be somebody else. And then I got to live that out and speak truth into that.
Okay, so going off of that and what we've been talking about, how do you use the media and just the internet to learn about God?
Well, one of the ways, I actually have on my phone a website that I have pulled up, and I use a a prayer website that uses a passage, and so I'm using a resource that's out there that I can easily pull up my phone to guide me in my prayer and meditation or devotions in the morning. So that's one way that I would use it. But I also use it when I'm trying to learn about different topics. So if I want to learn about the topic of, let's say, what is the history of Minnesota, and were we always a state, or did somebody else own us before we were an actual state that Minnesota owned, which, by the way, we were. I can go out there and learn some information, but I can learn about God in those ways as well. So that's how I would use media.
So we've been talking a lot about, how we get our information from the media, how we source the information, but how do we put good information back out in media? How do we put truth back out? Is there a way that we can use the media to share the gospel?
I think there is a way that we can share the gospel, and I think it's through, so I should give a disclaimer. I'm not completely on social media, that I choose to ration my time there by not being as engaged, because I would waste a lot of time. I would be very distracted, right? But with that being said, when I am on social media or different other forms of media, there is this way for us to communicate messages of hope. So there's this passage that talks about think on things that are pure and holy, and so we can put messages of hope that are out there. And I believe that tells us or shares and spreads the gospel. But I also think that we can use media as a way of engaging with others and building community. So I think part of sharing the gospel is developing community first and being in relationship. And so you develop those relationships, and by developing those relationships through, let's say, social media, you then earn the right to share more of your story about how Jesus is more than just a word or more than just a religion, but that it's a relationship and what my relationship is with him.
Can we just ask you a couple of questions about what you do personally to, the purposes of teaching and helping others to teach too? How you put good things out on media and use the media for good and teach others to do the same. Is there something that you do for that?
Yeah, so thinking specific strategies on how to use media in positive ways. I think that one of the things that I do is I try to always be affirming and not cast judgment on somebody if they say something that maybe I disagree with, for example. And so that's one way that I want to be affirming and affirm the person. Another way is sometimes I choose not to engage, especially if the discourse that's happening is getting more into a debate and there's sides that are developing, that I choose to stay out of it. So by way of not engaging, I think that's one of the ways that I contribute. And I think a third way that I would contribute is at times I will send messages where somebody asks for a prayer, pray for me. And I think we're always quick to say, yes, I'll pray for you, and then we don't maybe pray for them or we don't remember anything. And so I'll often just write a prayer and send it to them so that they know that I'm serious about my praying for them.
I like that. I might have to do that.
Yeah. Today, find someone to write a prayer to.
Today we have been discussing how media and faith relate to one another. We are thankful that Katie Friesen Smith has been able to join us today in the studio.
Thank you to all those listeners who have joined the conversation today, and thank you to Alyssa Tay for helping us produce this podcast.
The Living the Questions podcast is an educational extension of Bethel's Youth Theology Institute for high school students. For more information, check out Living the Questions at www.bethel.edu/living-the-questions. Again, that's www.bethel.edu/living-the-questions.
I bend, I might fall, but I'll never break, 'cause my God will hold me always. I might bend, I might fall, but I won't back down, because in you my love is found. I'm living the questions, finding the answers in your grace. I'm living the questions, discovering all that you have made.